sort of access that memory.
What's stunning to me is how quickly the dream evaporates, the memory of the dream, in relation to an actual experience. Like if we went outside and we saw some lady walk up to some guy and kick him in the balls, we'd be like, whoa! We would remember that. And that you'd be able to tell your friends, like, yeah, some lady just randomly walked up to some guy and kicked him in the balls. Like, we would remember that. And you would remember it 10 minutes later. You'd remember it an hour. You'd remember it next day. You'd be telling your friends, yeah, she just walked right up to him. I remember it like it was yesterday, because it was, right?
Yeah.
But a dream can be 10 minutes ago. And you wake up and, dude, it was King Kong, and he was swinging from my ceiling, and somehow or another he fit in the room, but the room got bigger, and you have these crazy dreams, and then 20 minutes later you forget all of it. Like, what is happening there?
So one current explanation is that the chemistry of the brain when you go into dream sleep is radically different.
Yeah.
So one of the chemicals called noradrenaline in the brain, which downstairs in the body, its sister chemical is called adrenaline. Noradrenaline actually plummets to the lowest levels. It's a stress chemical in the brain. It's one of them that gets shut off during dream sleep, which is
even if
remarkable.
You're panicking. Like, what if you fall off a building?
Well, what's interesting is that chemical is low whilst you're having that dream, but when you wake up from those, and some people often wake up, that's when you have the spike of noradrenaline. So it's still low when you're in dream sleep. But there's another chemical that goes in the opposite direction. It's called acetylcholine. It's the chemical that is actually altered in Alzheimer's disease. And these two chemicals will change essentially the input-output direction of information flow into the memory centers of the brain.
That makes sense because people take that as a nootropic.
They do.
Yeah, that's actually an alpha brain. When you take that, it's been clinically proven to enhance memory, especially verbal memory and recollection of words and things like that.
That's right.
So that's happening while you're sleeping.
Well, so you're in REM sleep, yeah. But what may be happening, our current models, if you sort of build these neural models to sort of mimic dreaming, it may be that during dreaming, it's principally about the outflow of information to generate dreams. And in fact, the chemical profile is oppositional to input, which is about saving. So it's about sort of pumping out information rather than committing information. And so when you come out of a dream sleep, you still get this sort of lingering after sort of taste of chemistry, as it were, in the brain. That means that the dreaming brain is more programmed to be outputting a narrative and an experience rather than actually committing it to memory, which is the opposite direction, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. How aware are you of dimethyltryptamine?
I'm somewhat aware of it scientifically, not personally.
Experientially?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things about psychedelic experiences with dimethyltryptamine, first of all, it's endogenous. Your brain produces it, your lungs, your liver produce it. But when you have a DMT experience, after it's over, the memory fades very rapidly. And it seems just like a dream in that regard, where while you're having it, what's bizarre is that you're having it while you're awake.
Yeah.
And then after you have it, within 10, 20 minutes, it is just like a dream that you can't remember. It's I remember like little flashes of experiences that I've had. And there's been a lot of speculation that that's one of the things that you're experiencing while you're in heavy REM sleep, and that could be responsible for the crazy visuals that you have that seem so vivid. I mean, there's been times where I've had dreams where I was 100% convinced that I was awake.
Yeah.
And then something happened. Like I do this thing sometimes where and if I do it consciously a lot, I think I saw in one of those wacky movies, like What the Bleep Do We Know? I think I saw it in that, where you walk up to a door. As you're walking through the door, you knock on the side of the door and go, "Am I awake?" Nope, not awake. Or am I asleep, rather?
Yeah.
No, I'm not asleep. Because I'm knocking on the door. Well, I did that, and my hand was just like going right through the wall. And I went, "Oh, I'm fucking sleeping." And then I woke up, and I was like, "Whoa!" But the feeling that I had while I was in that dream, it was so vivid. I mean, everything seemed so real. Like, what could possibly be causing me to construct this artificial reality in my mind that, at the moment at least, was indistinguishable from the reality that I experience right now. And I'm assuming, because I just knocked on this table, that I'm awake.
Yeah, I really hope I'm not just a fictive character in your dreamscape.
Well, maybe we're sharing a dream.
Yeah, very Inception-like.
Is that possible?
Not based on the science so far. But I think, what you're speaking about there really is almost why would Mother Nature create this thing called the dream experience? What would be the function of essentially every night going into what sums up to be about 2 total hours of virtual reality experience and testing? One possibility, which is deeply unsatisfying, is that it's just a byproduct. It's just epiphenomenal. That when your brain goes into this thing called REM sleep and all of the different patterns of brain activity that we described, an offshoot is this thing that we call dreaming. In the same way that a light bulb, the reason that we construct the apparatus that's a light bulb is to produce light. But when you produce light in that way, you also produce heat. It was never the function of the light bulb. It's just what happens when you produce light in that way. Maybe dreaming is just sort of the heat of REM sleep. And REM sleep serves lots of other functions. But that doesn't feel to me right, though.
Why?
Well, firstly, I think it's probably additionally metabolically demanding to have dreams in addition to this thing called REM sleep. And whenever Mother Nature burns calories, it's usually for a reason, because they're so precious.
That's a good point. That makes sense, too. Yeah. I read some article about the lack of REM sleep with marijuana users, and it was trying to say, and it made me super skeptical even as a pot smoker, it was trying to say that it's not bad for you because what it's essentially doing is bypassing the REM sleep and going directly into the deep sleep, and that it's helping you in that regard. Does that make sense to you?
It doesn't make sense.
As a neuroscientist, he says, nay, you fucking stoners.
I'm so deeply unpopular. I'm telling people,
No.
don't smoke pot, stay away from alcohol. Apart from a general personality, which is dislikable, this doesn't help me.
You're definitely not dislikable, but I don't think you're saying anything wrong. I think marijuana, like most things, is best used in moderation. And one thing that I got out of the Sober October thing wasn't just that it's fascinating to see the dreams like just ramp up and get crazy, but also that when you take a few days off and then smoke a little pot, the pot actually has more of an impact. In fact, one of my favorite psychedelic authors and lecturers, the late, great Terence McKenna, his advice was to not do marijuana for long periods of time and then do as much as you could stand. And he was a real psychedelic adventurer, and his thought was to really get the benefit out of marijuana, it's not something that should be used daily and recreationally. It should be used as a psychedelic sacrament. Not should be, because he actually did smoke pot pretty regularly rather. But his thought was, if you really want to get the full impact of it, you shouldn't be accustomed to it. And when you're accustomed to it, you build up a tolerance to it, and it doesn't have the same impact. Like, it's that thing, I don't know if you've ever been around pot smokers, but when someone doesn't smoke pot and then they get talked into smoking pot with some pot smokers, it's always a terrible idea. Because you got a bunch of people with super high tolerances and some poor person that doesn't have any tolerance, and they just get taken down a tornado rabbit hole journey into their childhood.
It's like 0 to 60 in like 1.2 seconds.
They're so paranoid and thinking about everything and freaking out and all these sensations that they've just never experienced before. But the idea that you could bypass REM sleep and go straight into the deep sleep, that doesn't make any sense to you.
No, it doesn't. And what we've learned over the past sort of 30 or 40 years is all stages of sleep are important. When you think about sleep as a state, it makes no sense. Firstly, you're vulnerable to predation. You're not finding food. You're not finding a mate. You're not reproducing. You're not caring for your young. On any one of those grounds, sleep should have been strongly selected against. As a collective, I mean, it's almost idiotic. If sleep does not serve an absolutely vital function, it is the biggest mistake that the evolutionary process ever made. And that counts for all of the stages of sleep too. again, Mother Nature wouldn't waste time putting you into a state that wasn't necessary. And what we've discovered is that all of those different stages of sleep that we spoke about all have unique and separate functions. So you can't shortchange any one of them. You don't need to bias towards one and try and sort of, placate the other. Evolution has taken a long time to get the blueprint accurately correct for each physiological individual. I wouldn't play around with it and think that you're smarter than that process.
Right. I when I read it, I felt like it was a justification for smoking a lot of pot. Man, you're just getting deeper sleep, man. You don't need that REM sleep. You're passing it up, man. You just go right into the deep, heavy, necessary sleep.
Au contraire.
Au contraire, potheads. So what is happening to the body during REM sleep that's so critical, that one particular aspect of sleep?
So firstly, in the body, your cardiovascular system seems to do something quite strange. It goes through periods of dramatic acceleration and then dramatic deceleration.
During REM sleep?
Yeah, during REM sleep. Quite unpredictable, too. We also know that during REM sleep, your brain paralyzes your body so that your mind can dream safely. So,
wow.
So, and that makes a lot of, sense. If you're thinking that you're, this world champion mixed martial arts person, and it's in the middle of the night, it's dark, you can't see, you're not perceiving your outside world, you're going to get popped out of the gene pool very quickly if you start acting out that experience. So there is a barrier in place that Mother Nature locks you down in incarceration, muscle incarceration.
That's crazy that you say that, because when I was fighting when I was young, I would wake up throwing kicks. I would kick in the middle of the night. I would do it all the time. I'd be sleeping and I would move and throw a kick in the middle of the night. Yeah. And I remember it waking me up like, what the fuck is wrong with me? And then I'd try to go back to sleep again. But I was obviously dreaming about competing.
Do you actually remember that? So when you woke up, did you remember dreaming at that point, or did you just have no recollection of anything going on at that point?
I believe I had a recollection. It's been a long time, but I believe I had a recollection. Like I would be like in bed with my girlfriend, and I'd wake her up too, because I'd just jolt. Like I wouldn't throw a full kick, but my body would move like I was going to. Like I would turn my hips and my leg would extend. I attribute it to the idea that it's so extreme, like the activity of fighting is so extreme that my brain had kind of like hypercharged itself to compete at this very high level, and that this was like so unusual that it was almost at red alert all the time, and maybe even trying to work out patterns while I was sleeping.
That's exactly the evidence that we have now. So for things like motor skills, or even rats running around a maze where they will learn specific sort of, navigational pathways and even skilled motor movements. What you can do is you can place these electrodes into centers of the brain. We work in my sleep center works on humans, but other people have done these studies in rats. And you implant electrodes and you measure the brain cells firing as the rat is running around the maze. And let's say that you can sort of play little tones for each brain cell. So they're running around the maze, and you can listen to the brain cells learning the signature of that maze. So it goes ba-ba-ba-bum-bum, ba-ba-ba-bum, ba-ba-ba-bum. What was amazing is that when you let those rats sleep, but you keep listening to the brain, what you hear is brum, 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 as if the brain is actually, and in fact it is, it's replaying the exact same sequence, the memory sequence that it was learning whilst it was awake. It's replaying, but at a speed that is 20 times faster.
Whoa.
So, now we start to get into this inception world, and I don't mean to, because the scientific data, we're not sort of in that territory. But, that notion of time compression and time dilation that Christopher Nolan played so well with in that movie, we can see that at the level of brain cell firing in rats as they're learning these mazes. And it comes back to what you're saying, which is that the better that they rehearse those skilled memories, when you wake them up and test them the next day, that predicts how much better they are in terms of their performance. So it's not just that you learn, you go to sleep, and you replay and you hit the save button on these new memories. You actually sculpt out those memories and you improve them. And we've done studies with motor skill learning, critical for athletic performance. And practice does not make perfect. Practice with a night of sleep is what makes perfect, because you come back the next day and you're 20 to 30% better in terms of your skilled performance than where you were at the end of your practice session the day before.